Have you ever felt that heavy, lingering tension in your home? As if the very air became thick and uncomfortable the moment a certain relative walked through the door. It sounds almost impossible to talk about, right? We have been raised with this deep-seated belief that family is everything, and that loving our neighbor includes giving our own kin a free, unlimited pass into our personal space. Because of this, many of us are trapped in a cycle of silent guilt. We convince ourselves that being a good person means we have to open our doors to anyone who shares our blood, even if they bring absolute chaos into our sanctuary. But today, we need to shift that perspective. We need to look at this through the lens of spiritual stewardship and biblical wisdom, because your home is not just a house. It is an altar that deserves to be protected. The truth is, not every relative is meant to have a seat at your table in every season of your life. Jesus himself warned us in Matthew 10:36 that following him could cause division. He was describing the very real cost of choosing God, that a man's enemies will sometimes be those of his own household. This isn't about promoting hatred. It is about recognizing that your loyalty to God must come before the pressure of family expectations. What you allow into your home ends up shaping your spiritual environment. Today, we are going to break down 6 specific types of relatives you need to be careful about, starting with the most destructive ones. Lesson 1. The chaos creators. Let's talk about those relatives who operate like a wrecking ball to your household peace. These are the people who simply do not know how to exist without conflict. Every time they cross your threshold, they bring along an invisible bag filled with old drama, sharp criticisms, and toxic gossip from the past. They are master architects of discord. They will sit in your living room, vent to you about one sibling, and then walk out the door to tell that same sibling exactly what they think of you. They love creating sides and forcing you to fight wars that have nothing to do with you. The worst part is that when they leave, the atmosphere of your home stays tainted. You are left dealing with the stress, the arguments, and the lingering tension that they left behind. Now, you might think you have to tolerate this to keep the peace, but the Bible gives us a very different instruction. Romans 16:17 tells us clearly, "Watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles, and avoid them." Notice the word is avoid. It does not say sit them at your table and hope that your presence will change them. No. A person who thrives on conflict will inevitably contaminate the sanctuary you have worked so hard to build. Proverbs 22:10 gives us an absolute principle for spiritual cleansing. Drive out the mocker, and strife will go out, and quarreling and abuse will cease. If you want peace to rule within your 4 walls, you have to be the gatekeeper. Peace is not something that just happens. It is something you must defend and protect with clear, firm boundaries. If someone is constantly bringing other people's wars into your home, you have the right and the responsibility to close the door. Lesson 2. The carriers of corruption. Next, we must address a category that often makes people feel incredibly uncomfortable because it challenges the social norms we have been taught since childhood. I am talking about relatives who live in open, unapologetic iniquity. These are people whose lifestyles are defined by things that stand in direct opposition to your values, whether that involves persistent dishonesty, deep-seated addictions, or engaging in dark, immoral practices that they flaunt without a hint of remorse. Society will try to guilt-trip you here. You will hear phrases like, "But they are family, you have to be there for them," or "Blood is thicker than water, so you should just look the other way." But look at the standards set in 1 Corinthians 5:11. It is startlingly clear. It instructs us not to associate, and not even to share a meal, with those who claim to be part of the faith, but live in blatant immorality, greed, or idolatry. Now, I want to be very careful here. We are not talking about a family member who is stumbling, who is struggling with a weakness, or who is broken and seeking prayer. We are talking about people who celebrate their lifestyle and actively bring that darkness into your home. This is not about you playing the role of a judge or acting like you are superior to them. This is about spiritual protection. Proverbs 13:20 warns that whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. When you give full access to your home to those who celebrate evil, you are inviting that toxic influence to take root in your living room. You are showing your children and your spouse that rebellion against God is something that can be normalized at your dinner table. If a relative brings moral poison into your space, cutting off that access is not a lack of forgiveness. It is an act of spiritual hygiene. It is you standing guard over the sanctuary that God has entrusted to you. You can love them from a distance, but you do not have to let their choices compromise the holiness of your home. Lesson 3. The Mockers of Faith. This next point is perhaps the hardest to navigate because it requires a backbone of steel. We are talking about those relatives who cross the line from simple disagreement into active, cynical mockery of your beliefs. You know the type. They sit at your dinner table, they enjoy your hospitality, and then they use that very moment to ridicule your walk with God. They are the ones who make snide, passive-aggressive remarks every time you mention your church. They roll their eyes when you pray, or they intentionally take God's name in vain just to stir the pot and make you feel awkward in your own living room. It is easy to brush this off as just being blunt or having a different opinion, but the Apostle John gives us a much more sobering perspective. In 2 John 1:10-11, John wrote this as a warning against welcoming those who actively spread false teaching and tear down the truth of Christ. And that same principle speaks directly to anyone who uses your home as a stage to undermine your faith. The scripture is clear. Whoever welcomes them into their space becomes a participant in their evil deeds. Think about how profound that is. Hosting someone who actively belittles your Savior is essentially opening your front door to darkness. You are called to love them, yes, but love does not require you to sacrifice your altar. You can pray for their heart to change from the safety of your private war room, but your home is a sanctuary of light. It is meant to be a refuge where your family feels honored, not mocked. Do not trade the honor of God for the sake of keeping things comfortable with a relative who thrives on cynicism. When you allow someone to sit in your home and tear down your convictions, you are inviting confusion into your children's hearts and coldness into your own spirit. Stand firm. You are not being unkind. You are being protective. You are ensuring that your home remains a place where the presence of God is respected above all else. Lesson 4. The Volatile and Violent. We need to address something that is often swept under the rug in many households: the presence of people who live in a constant state of aggression. Whether this manifests as physical intimidation, sharp verbal attacks, or deep emotional manipulation, violence is not just a character flaw, it is a destructive spirit. There are relatives who act like walking time bombs. They scream, they throw tantrums, they slam doors, or they turn every minor disagreement into a volcanic eruption. Too often, people justify this behavior with excuses like, "Oh, that is just how Uncle Arthur is," or "He has always had a short fuse." But listen to me, the Bible does not give a free pass to rage. Proverbs 22:24-25 gives us a very clear command to stay away from such people. Do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with those who are easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. Pay close attention to that warning. You may learn their ways. Anger is incredibly contagious. It acts like a virus that spreads from one person to the next, creating an atmosphere of walking on eggshells. If a family member, whether it is an older sibling, a grandparent, or a cousin, cannot control their tongue or their outbursts. They have effectively lost the privilege of entering your home. Your house is supposed to be a place of safety for your spouse and your children. It is the one place in the world where they should feel calm, not anxious. Do not let your living room turn into an emotional war zone just because you are afraid of the fallout that comes from setting a boundary. If someone cannot keep their temper in check, they cannot be part of your inner circle. Protecting your family from a volatile spirit is not an act of rejection. It is an act of love for those who live under your roof. Lesson 5. The Boundary Breakers. Now we need to address a very common struggle. This is where most people hit a wall, feeling the crushing weight of emotional manipulation. There are certain relatives who are convinced that because you share the same last name, they are entitled to a permanent, all-access pass to your life. They show up unannounced, expecting you to drop everything to cater to their whims. They feel comfortable criticizing your parenting, judging how you handle your finances, or meddling in the private dynamics of your marriage. When you try to set a firm boundary, they don't respond with respect. Instead, they act offended. They pull the classic guilt card, saying things like, "I changed your diapers when you were a baby," or, "After everything I have sacrificed for this family, this is how you treat me?" Let me be clear. Control disguised as family loyalty is not love. It is manipulation, plain and simple. The Bible gives us the ultimate framework for this in Genesis 2:24, which states that a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. This establishes a new, primary authority under your roof. You and your spouse are the heads of your own home. You have to understand that crossing your threshold is a privilege you grant, not a birthright that anyone can claim. 2 Thessalonians 3:11 explicitly warns us to avoid those who are idle and busybodies. If a relative continuously ignores your rules and tries to undermine your leadership in your own home, you have both the moral duty and the biblical right to restrict their access. Setting boundaries is not an act of rejection. It is an act of preservation. You are building the necessary walls to keep your marriage strong and your household healthy. Do not let someone else's inability to respect your space make you feel like the bad guy. You are simply protecting the sanctuary God has placed under your care. Lesson 6. The Spiritual Drainers. Finally, we arrive at a type of relative who might not be loud, aggressive, or openly rebellious, yet they act as a heavy anchor, dragging you away from your divine purpose. These are the spiritual drainers. Every time you spend time with them, you walk away feeling spiritually depleted, empty, and discouraged. They are the professional complainers who see the world through a lens of negativity, constantly focusing on the temporal while dismissing the eternal. They do not understand your calling. To them, your devotion to God is unnecessary or even extreme. They are the ones who will pull you aside to say things like, "Why are you so obsessed with church?" Or, "Can't you just be normal like the rest of us?" In Mark 3:21, we see a powerful example of this. Even Jesus' own mother and brothers thought he was losing his mind, and they actually came to take him away and stop him from fulfilling his mission. If you are waiting for the validation or the approval of your relatives before you fully obey God, you are going to stay stuck in the same place for the rest of your life. Remember the unbreakable law in 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good character. This holds true even if that bad company shares your DNA. These individuals may be slowly extinguishing your faith, drop by drop, by constantly anchoring you to your past fears and earthly limitations. You cannot move forward into the promises God has for you if you keep opening your door to those who only want to pull you backward. Knowing who you allow into your home is not an act of arrogance or heartlessness. It is the highest level of spiritual maturity. You are the steward of your own life and your own home. Understand this clearly. Not every relative is assigned by God to walk closely with you in this specific season. You can still love them from a distance. You can still bless them, but you do not have to give them access to your inner sanctuary. Your mental peace, the stability of your home, and your calling are far too valuable to be compromised by the opinions of those who do not share your vision. To wrap this up, remember that knowing who you let through your front door is not an act of arrogance or heartlessness. It is the ultimate expression of spiritual maturity and wise stewardship. You need to cement this truth in your spirit. Spiritual alignment will always, in every season, outweigh the weight of blood ties. Not every relative is assigned by God to walk in close proximity to you in this current chapter of your life. Some you will love deeply, but you will do it from a distance. Others you will support and bless when they are in need, but you will do so without granting them access to your inner sanctuary. And for some, as difficult as it may be, you will simply have to keep the door firmly locked, because your mental peace is non-negotiable. The purity and stability of your home matter. Your marriage matters, and your divine calling is far more important than the fleeting opinions of others or the pressure to seek family approval. If this message resonated with you, if it finally lifted that heavy, misplaced religious guilt off your shoulders, share it right now with someone who needs to hear it. To seal this commitment, go down to the comments and write, "Only what comes from God is allowed into my home." Let that be a firm declaration of your faith and an act of obedience to the Lord's leading. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so we can continue growing together in true biblical wisdom and spiritual authority. Thank you for walking through this journey with me, and may your home always be a protected, peaceful refuge for the things that truly matter.